me in December and said, "You'll be on the third week in gender, sexuality, marginalization." And I freaked out and wrote off this thing off the top of my head. And because I really react to being classified in any way, whether it's an autobiographical writer, a regional writer, a southern writer, a feminist writer, a good writer. Well, no, that's all right. But anyway, being classified. So I just, or marginal, and that I haven't figured out. I don't know whether that's good or bad. Maybe by the end of the day, I'll think it's okay. But so I said, no, well, I'm going to write a piece out to talk about something completely different. And so I was going to do something about this prose poem, the difference between a prose poem and a short story. But again, it's unfigured out. But we'll sort of talk about that actually. And then I came up with a tie. I mean, we had to have a tie. And so I think it was because it was in winter and the bus rides and my bones ached. And but I do like it. And then I hadn't known that there would be a book called Writing Down the Bone. So that was embarrassing. Fun. But I like Close to the Bone. I like Shirley's Bones. I like, I felt it in my bones. Um, Bare Bones. And in Oakland, black teenagers call losing their virginity being boned. I boned him, or he boned me. It is, there's something really, well, I like that. But what I want to talk about is a real difference between a prose poem and the short story is just how far into, not just into the reader's consciousness, but to everyone's consciousness, into the bones as a story can go, which no matter how wonderful a prose poem, really can't get that community. I think a short story can. Baudelaire's prose poems, I just love all of them. And you have this hemisphere and a head of hair. Long let me inhale deeply the odor of your hair, into it plunge the whole of my face, like a thirsty man into the water of the spring, and wave it in my fingers like a scented handkerchief, to shake memories since I'm there. If you could only know all that I see, all that I feel, all that I hear in your hair. My soul floats upon turbans as the souls of other men with my music. Your hair contains an entire dream full of sails and masts. It contains vast seas to soften the sun's very delightful climates, where space is deeper and azure, where the atmosphere is perfumed with fruit, with foliage, and with human skin. In the ocean of your hair I am shown brief visions of a port resounding with melancholy songs, of vigorous men of all nations with ships of all shapes, outlining their fine and complicated architecture against an immense sky where eternal heat languidly quivers. In the caresses of your hair I recover the languor of long hours passed on a divan in the cabin of a fine ship, rocked by the imperceptible surge of the port between the flower pots and refreshing water jugs. In the glowing fire grate of your hair I inhale the odor of tobacco mingled with opium and sugar. In the night of your hair I see the infinity of tropical azure resplendent. On the down banks of your hair I inebriate myself with the mingled odors of tar, of musk, and of coconut oil. Long let me bite your heavy black tresses. When I gnaw your elastic and rebellious hair, it seems to me that I am eating them. And well, I love the rhythm shape. And to me, it's perfect in all this, in that domain, energy for it, and all the images around the hair. Seemed to me that in a good prose poem, the writer imposes a form around it and imposes a symmetry around. Well, for example, here, I have for in a good short story, a rhythm and a form will emerge. what you have to start with is the deeply felt thought, the deeply felt truth. And then the form automatically emerges from it. It's not something you say, well, all right, you need to be, like writing an essay, you have a statement and then you prove your point and then you end it up and figure it out. If the impulse is pure, the form is going to follow. It's going to follow it in itself. Eudora Welty said, what happens in any good short story is that the reader discovers a design in life. I feel that at a subliminal level or just a very basic level, in any good short story, it's the rhythm, the pattern of the story that we respond to, and we respond to it because the truth cannot have a staccato or a calming, a badly formed form. That's all. When people tell the truth, their rhythm, their voice changes, the pattern changes, it's the sound of truth. As much as they tone of the voice, we hear a natural rhythm. I work in a children's hospital in Old Pate, and I was really offer of a lot of ladies going a lot. I was talking to one of the nurses, and who works with children with AIDS, babies, and leukemia patients, and dying patients. And she was talking about when they're dying, what she does. And it's sort of past the point when been reading Bible books that talk about going to heaven with the angel. But the nurses don't talk. They either hold the children or lie with them. And what they do is they let their breath mingle, the rhythm of their breath mingle with the child's breath. And this, more than any other technique or any other thing that they do, comforts and quiets the child. And there's a safety feeling that they're breathing easily. And it's very hard to describe this in terms of writing, but I feel that we respond to that almost on a breathing level when you read of the work. The aesthetic pattern, the symmetry of form, this is what speaks to the reader, whatever the subject. This is his basic, but with children again. As once upon a time, those that up there are only there in the baby day. You read children's stories and you skip the mama bear. Hey, wait a minute. You know, they know how it's going to turn out. Go, we lock them there. They want the rhythm and the comfort of that design. And it's the same in the Three Bears is in the complex music of James Joyce's The Day, which ends up with this wonderful rhythmic coda at the end. As much as the image of the graveyard and the snow is the pain and slowness, the sadness of the rhythm that speaks to all. And the reason I'm trying to talk about this was last year, I was, amazed by the good writing that Mr. Louis Hawkins got, a really good quality. And for the most part, a lot of the stories, something bothered me, and I couldn't put my finger exactly what was it, since they were, so technically so good, and they, the students were literate, intelligent. The writing was pure, clean, and I didn't know what was missing to give that sense of catharsis and of closure. This is sort of a universality of feeling, and it's because the writing was too good. I mean, it really, and I think this is a problem in writing classes. I know it's a problem with friends of mine who have a contract for a book and they need more story. So I'm going to write a good story. They write these good stories, technically wonderful, but something's the impetus, the purity of impetus is gone when it's writing too please or too show off. I'm have you what I jotted down was Melville, Cervantes, Kerouac, Dostoevsky. I mean, they would be sunk And then if they write, Tristram Shandy, forget it, or Checkov with a New York editor, he'd say, well, look, where's the plot? Where is it? Your characters don't develop. I mean, he would be some. So, anyway, this emphasis, I think, upon the form itself. I love Bobbie talking about the free writing. Let it go, let it go. I think the more you do that, the more you'll get in touch with where you are. It's almost like a Zen meditations of, and we were talking about this, Michael, this morning, of sensing who you are and what. I'm sorry, Mark. I knew it. You're the only name I knew. Yeah. That I was sure of. But anyway, from that and out of that, the impetus for what you're writing has a better chance of coming out. That's all. This is like there are a lot of young writers who have pretty much cloned Raymond Carver's style and his dialogue and the cleanness, but they've forgotten what made him write in the first place, which was pain and compassion. That's the only way he could write about the pain and the love he felt. They were told that was to write in a clipped, clean way. Otherwise, it would have been just too much. He was forced to write. The writing, the clean writing, and the sparsity and the starkness of his melody were precisely because the feelings were too much to just spill all over the page. So, as far as I'm concerned, it's what he felt to begin with that created that prose. So imitating just the plainness becomes pretty sterile. This is a nice quote from Paul Metcalf. I took and take seriously Dr. Williams' remark that anything is a legitimate subject for a poem. As a corollary to this, I would like to say that the subject matter of a work of art matters only in that it be something about which the artist cares passionately. Having accepted this, one looks around at language and realizes that within the various complex disciplines and specialized areas of knowledge that have developed over the years in both the sciences and humanities, and particularly in the so-called sciences of man, such as anthropology, unique bodies of language representing idiosyncratic modes of thought have grown up. These have remained more or less isolated from the broad sense of literature, from the areas of language that are generally drawn into literature. Why not mind them? Particularly in this much as so many of these linguistic organizations are so extraordinarily beautiful. They are part of our legitimate contemporary resource. Anthropology, ethnology, mythology, archaeology, geology, all are there waiting for admission into quality. A good line of prose breaks down into what is said. This involves both extent and limits. And two, what is the appeal to the ear, i.e., what is the music? It is sometimes forgotten that prose is as much involved with music as is poetry. And I remember asking this last year, but I'm always fascinated by this, especially in young writers. What was your influence? Why are you here? What was the first time when you wrote it? Try to remember that, and hang on to that first time, the first thing you wrote that you felt. Do you remember? I'm betting that there was almost a physical, rocky, maybe not passion, but a rhythm going on when the story started writing itself. When you felt that it was, here again, and using that word, true. Or the first story you read that you loved. There's a response on a kinetic, physical level when it might, anyone sort of hearing what I'm saying, that I believe it's a physical. People talk about a story writing itself, or that the characters take over, and they don't know what the next character's going to do. Remember when that happened, when you wrote a story, when suddenly it started happening. It had its own thing. It had its fun rhythm. Was like you, like as turtles, fishing. It starts calm and it really goes to forward in a physical way. And it only happens when you're initially are telling something that's true to you. And I think it was, I don't know if it was you or someone yesterday that said, well, does this apply only to autobiographical writing? I'm not talking about the way it's true that your grandma really fell down the stairs and all that. That it's not necessarily an autobiographical writing at all. It's any writing or any story that grabs you and you need to write it. And you're doing it for you. You're a marvelous example of that. The two stories, one you had, which was a wonderful story. It was a perfect plot. It was a story sent from heaven above, but it was not really your story. It was not your story. And another, here again, it wasn't the truth she didn't tell about. I know Tree got really upset about something, and there was this pretty good rage going in and love going in. And she wrote a wonderful story out of that. And because what it came out of was a gut feeling, and to reverse feelings, because of anger, and the anger generated what is beautiful, what do I love, and so through the rhythm of the story, it worked. It worked because, and it had nothing to do with what. Maybe I'm all wrong, but I felt so. No. But that it came out about what initiated the story. But I feel that I felt that the rhythm of the story was anger and love that sort of warring in there that gave that story a perfect little form. And then that's superb. It was nice to see that illustrated. And I guess I'm repeating myself again about this rhythm that emerges naturally. I was talking outside with someone about who was asking whether the rhythm of women's writing is different from that of men. And I immediately became feminist and said, yeah, it's like the contractions of childbirth, but it's also the. No, what I meant was. It's hard work, Bobbie. You must admit it's fucking hard. What I meant was, you can't, if it's going well, you really can't stop. Well, let's say orgasm. The same thing, you can't used to change your mind in the middle. That's more fun. Okay. All right.
Usually you have the orgasm first, and then you have.
That's right. Well, anyway, what I'm saying is that you can't stop in the middle of it, huh? And I repeat again, Eudora Welty, that phrase that any good stories, boy, we like stories, good stories, is we are reassured that there's a design in life. This and any good story, it's like we respond in a primitive way. It's like a freeze frame. It stops time. It postpones death. Let's just hold this just for a minute. But it reminds us at the same time of the continuity and pan. And here again, this is all subliminal. And every good story has that design, and we respond to that as much as the plot, the characters, the dialogue, and people. God, I repeat myself a lot. I have all these notes, but I said here again that imposing a craft and a style and foreshadowing, and whether it's going to be in the first person or the second person, if you start out with that, you're sunk. If you care enough about what you want to say, the form will happen. If you have something, you'll work at it. You'll try the first person. You'll try the second person. You'll try episodic, like Bobbie and I were talking this morning about. Yeah, maybe not, but that will work. But what I want to get at is the truth of this relationship, and then this narrative, first person, I've tried it in third person, But what I want to say is I've got it here, and sooner or later, the form is going to emerge from where it is. Oh, I mean, and I guess the other thing, and I'm not talking about deep when I say true. There's a nice thing about true. Flaubert says there is no truth. There are merely different ways of perceiving truth. But that truth has got to be yours, and whatever it is you're writing about your hierarchy dying or your first day as the office, it doesn't have to be serious. It can be, that's and Bobbie, I'm so glad yesterday. Where is Bobbie's story? You all have a copy of his Would you mind reading it again for the 4 millionth time? Please. May not to change.
May not to change the subject, but you look good. She looked all tired last night. How'd you like me to prepare this liver? Do you pound your liver? I'll tell you how I prepare it. I'd lost temper. May not to change the subject, but you look good. She looked awful tired last night. How'd you like me to prepare this liver? Do you pound your liver? Oh, I'll tell you how I prepare it. You can do it any way you want to. I turn it in flour. Yeah, Mama likes it that way, cooked right. Turn it in flour that has salt and pepper in it, and then put gravy on it and let it simmer. If you turn it in flour and fry it brown and pour the grease off, then put just a little water in the pan and put a lid on. I don't put any water in it at all. I just fry it really slow for a long time, and it comes out fried real crisp. If you want to make gravy, make it in the pan afterwards. I start the grease and fry the onions until they're absolutely brown. So the whole pan has that taste of brown onions. Then I take the onions out to the side, and then I turn the liver in flour, lay it in the pan, and put it on a low fire, and just cook it for a long time on the low fire, so it comes out really brown. Camma cooked some at the house one time. It really amazed me. She put the liver in there and she braised it very lightly. It wasn't even tan, just enough to set flour. And then she put the onions she cut up into the pan on the range, and she added milk. Well, then you're going to end up with stewed onions. Well, that's exactly what. Well, that's the way I fix it. Except I take the liver, the salt and pepper it, and turn it in flour, and then I put it in hot grease and I brown it real good. And then I pour off every drop of that grease, and I put some water in the bottom of the pan. I slice my onions thick and lay them all over the top, and I put a lid on it and I turn it low. I can't get onions to come out right unless I cook them first. So when I get through, I have my onions and gravy and lid. I cook them in separate pans a lot of times, you know. I tried making measurements like that, you know, like Papa used to eat. He'd have the gravy and all just gooey. You could actually take the onions off the top and have the liver and gravy on the bottom.
Yeah, I love that story. And now there are a lot of ways just to like it. I mean, the liver and onions, and the just the dialogue itself. But there's another place where at least I respond to it, and that's the rhythm of women talking who are close, of family talking, and as and being and here and being a child, and you don't even care what they're talking about, and maybe you're reading National Geographic for the 1000th time, and the old ladies are talking in the other room, and it's that rhythm, the rhythm of women who are close to each other, who know each other, has the same history in the background, and this is a comforting story to me, because it's okay. I mean, they may be just awful women, but you love them, and the love, and the and they all disagree about the liver. I mean, they all think they're right, and none of them can cook it like I can cook it. Doesn't matter.
It's an intense tone. So that when I was performing that piece, I would have some, there's a look on the face of a person who's just gone into stasis, and they're about to say something and they're going to say it because their collar's at. And I've had Warren come out to me saying, the way I cook.
Yeah.
Stand there and I've had you give me the whole bloody recipe. Like that was what I was doing, affording the audience at large.
But the purpose of this thought alone is the rhythm. It's like another example I like is people. I remember listening to Paul Desmond and Jim Hall years ago in New York, and this just a guitar and a saxophone, and just playing together. And I don't think I was writing them, but yeah, I was. But I remember saying, I want to write like that. I want my dialogues to write like that, interchange. And it was like people talking, at night before you go to sleep. It was a very unlikely combination. I think they played one night you never were together. Paul Desmond and Jim Hall. Desmond usually played with Dave Brubeck, and Jim Hall mostly played alone, but playing together in that dialogue. And it was that, night before you go to sleep, you can have the husband who goes droning on, and the wife says, or the wife who's talking about the children and the doctors and the nursery school and how much is in it, and the husband say, Or you can have two people talking, just real, say they've had a nice night and you've been out, and geez, did you hear what so-and-so said? And the rhythm of two people who love each other and are in tune, the rhythm will be what's true. Not what they say, because they don't really care about Goodness Day. They just don't want to go to sleep yet, and they're still talking. It doesn't matter what they talk, doesn't matter what the story's about, really, if the impetus is there. The difference in sound, for example, between Jane Austen and Kathy Ackler is beyond judgment. But their intent, but the sound, like the trumpet for the fires, is pure. Each one of them has purity of stain in it when it's their own, but it's there. It's different. And Jane Austen's is very measureless at the volume or something. But you'll see that that's at one level, even though you'll respond to that. And it's an authority of voice, and the pure. If you can get that, and I think a lot of free writing, a lot of notebook writing, a lot of letting your own. So here again, doesn't mean autobiographical. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about your gut comes through. You don't have to tell what it's about. Get that in. There's an authority of voice that the reader hears. And anything you can say, you can make up anything you want. And the reader will accept it as true. I'm going more about the rhythm, orgasm, baby. And what I'm saying is, what will happen is this, if you get that truth of form happen, is it'll go beyond the first name, it'll go beyond the anecdote into an allegorical. It'll become like a myth. And this form is what pretty much any short story, I didn't say it somewhere on another note, V.S. Pritchett said that any good story is a myth. And this doesn't pertain really. In fact, he says just the opposite of what I'm saying, but I love this thing from Baudelaire, and he wrote it in 1857, and it's notes on Edgar Allan Poe. And I can see why I like Poe, precisely because of the form and the rhythm. Said, He goes on about literary domains, the most numerous and most varied. There is one of which Poe is especially fond. It is but short-storied. It has the immense advantage over the novel of vast proportion that its brevity adds to the intensity of effect. This type of reading, which can be accomplished in one sitting, leaves in the mind a more powerful impression than a broken reading, often interrupted by the worries of business and the cares of social life. The unity of impression, the totality of effect, is an immense advantage which can give to this type of composition very special superiority, to such an extent that an extremely short story is even better than an extremely long story. The artist, if he is skillful, will not only adapt his thoughts to the incidents, but having conceived deliberately and at leisure and effectively produce, will invent the incidents, will combine the effects most suitable to bring about the desired effects. The conception has to come first. This is interesting, I like this, I don't know if it's true or not, it sounds good. If the first sentence is not written with the idea of preparing this final impression, the work has failed from the start. There must not creep into the entire composition a single word which is not intentional, which does not tend directly or indirectly to complete the premeditated design. There is one point in which a short story is superior even to the poem. Rhythm is necessary to the development of the idea of beauty, which is the greatest and most noble aim of poetry. Now, the artifices of rhythm are an insurmountable obstacle to the minute development of thought and expression, which has truth as its object. But truth can often be the goal of the short story, and reasoning the best tool for the construction of a perfect short story. That is why this type of composition, which is not as high in the scale as pure poetry, can provide more varied results more easily appreciated by the average reader. Moreover, the author of a short story has at his disposal a multitude of tones, with nuances of language, the rational tone, the sarcastic, the humor, which are repudiated by poetry, which are, as it were, dissonant, outrageous to the idea of beauty. That is also why the author who seeks in the short story the single goal of beauty works only at a great disadvantage, deprived as he is of the most useful instrument, rhythm. And here again, I think it's equally important in prose. I repeat here again about each bit short story being unique. And many writers that Eudora Welty and Flannery O'Connor said over and over in different ways that every good short story is about death. And here again, it's that catching of life and that premonition that at some level we're reminded of the rhythm of life, of the births and deaths. And this can happen. It's not that each story should be an epiphany or be really deadly serious, but it should change our pace. It should catch us. Catch our pulse and eyes, close or the bones, and be at some level a reminder of our mortality and of our common mortality. A good short story reminds us that we're all in this together. That no matter what it is, I mean, I love those women in the library school. You know, I'm in with them. This can happen in the most frivolous pieces. P.G. Wodehouse, F.P. Benson, Mark Twain's Frogs of Calaveras County. It doesn't mean that you have to be serious. It can be in funny. Yeah.
Versus in Bobbie's pieces now. Where's the consciousness?
If you should dance to mortality, it's the mortal and Paul. The dictionary definition, when I headed for the dictionary at one point and looked up mortal, it suddenly sounded like someone was singing a Cracker Bell while it said was bound to die. Some just that's terrible. That it's catching. Because
I feel a lot of life in it, and my tone of her voice was low, woman, shaky voice. I mean,
but it's sort of like.
Was it?
Okay, it said it's catching a moment when these women are together and talking. Half of them are probably dead by now anyway, or some will be, or gone or disappeared. But this is the time when they were my sense when what I respond to is a warmth in the kitchen, hot kitchen in Texas, if I can imagine, and the women and the family together, and of course that doesn't happen very often in all our
I think was the it's very helpful.
yeah, it's very happening that, yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. And it has that intensity of that closeness of communication that is bound to disappear one way or another. That's what I mean about the guest. I mean, we get that immediacy of that closeness.
That human aspect of them that never, it's not.
It's not, you're subliminal. It is. But in every one, in a good story, we have that sense of this is vanishing, or this closeness is precious.
Or that this is not.
Yeah, it's just, that's it. Like the freeze frame of catching life from your hand, holding it in your hand, just a second. If something is real.
We were all sitting in that room with this
Yeah.
one grandmother, who was then 90-something, had gone to bed to die.
Mm.
And the conversation was going on with the Baudeleire, and she was adding to her.
Uh-huh.
But he's mostly pissed off because when they remade it, they would put it home more stuff. I mean, there was stuff going on, but I mean, she was dying. But that isn't, that was a thing. So
That's
the
okay,
shame
but you
that
chose,
was
it.
accidental.
In that, yeah.
Yeah.
But so it's accidental, but it's true. I mean, what it's it, and you chose it.
What?
Well, she's not taking credit for it because she just quoted him direct.
Yeah.
Was for me, not even knowing that, but just now that I've listened to you tell the story or read this to her twice, there's a few. I mean, in my own family, the only times that people are together like that
Or for food.
or for something happy. There's that sense that these people are talking like this because there's something else happening.
Exactly.
Their minds all deep.
Yeah.
And I feel that.
Yeah.
I mean, I felt it more strongly this time in the
Uh-huh.
guess out there. It just wasn't paying as much attention as I think, but I felt that. I was thinking about. I mean, I started thinking about my own when my mom was dying. The conversation I'm still on that had nothing to do with the fact that there was this woman laying on the couch around the woman back down. And I had that feeling. That's what I started to think about when I was listening to his stories. I'm sorry, I felt like here these really they're talking around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
I feel like those kind of authentic details mirror that bigger idea, but not in a way that is a direct reflection, no?
We don't nail down the experience. A lot of the experience is really perfect.
I'm sort of jumping ahead of myself, but Rebecca West says that the major events of any short story must occur outside of the painting.
Who says that?
Rebecca West.
Repeat.
The major events of any short story must occur outside of the pages. I remember reading that and thinking it sounded good. But when you read, pay attention as you read stories and see how often that's true. I mean, Bobbie's story, for example, The Dead. Wait, I have a couple of more examples, and we'll talk about that. Cause I'm jumping ahead of myself, but just because you brought this up, Mark, Marguerite Duras, Ecosys also. Stop it. She concentrates. She talks about the passion that is told in its absence, and it's talking a lot about writing about love. The passion that happens outside the confines of the book. No, this is Marguerite Duras. The passion that is told in its absence. That happens. This is a direct quote. In quotes, the passion that is told in its absence. That happens outside the confines of the book.
Said Shakespeare, I mean, starting place in the village.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then she goes on, the essence of love is that it can't be written. It's a love that writing hasn't yet. This is Marguerite Duras again. It's a love that writing hasn't yet reached. She also says that silence is instinctive to women. I don't know if I agree. I just thought I'd throw this in.
It's a nice idea.
I mean, she's just one of the most prolific writers. I'm sure she talks as much as she writes. But it's a nice quote, I must say. She says, literature comes out of and goes into silence. And there's something, I haven't figured it out, but I think it's true. Charlie Parker, definition of jazz was the silence between the notes. And it's pretty much the same thing. Oh, here's another quote, which pertains to what I was saying about risen. And this is Flaubert in a letter to George Sand. When I come on a bad assonance or a repetition in my sentences, I'm sure I'm floundering in the faults. By searching, I find the proper expression, which was also the only one, and which is also harmonious. The word is never lacking when one possesses the idea. Is there not in this precise fitting of parts something eternal, like a principle? If not, why should there be a relation between the right word and the musical word? And why should the greatest impression of thought always result in cold truth? I think cold. Oh, I wanted to read this one poem of Gloria Frym's called Good Morning. And this is back to my feeling that it doesn't have to be serious to be good.
Color poem.
She calls it a prose poem. I feel it's a short story. Tree, would you read it?
Sure. Good morning. He could leap out of bed, called by an alarm only he could hear. He could saunter into the shower. He could shut the shower door and rattle the tiny wired hexagons of glass. I could see him in silhouette soaping down to his private places. He could step out of the shower and rub his shoulders with a white towel. He could stand in front of the steamy mirror brushing his teeth with the towel draped around his waist. He could comb his hair, but leave it wet and slicked back, the moisture gravitating down to the ends, a few drops stuck to his cheeks below his sideburns. He could sashay into the kitchen and put the kettle on to boil. He could call out, "Coffee," in a throaty voice. I could moan back, "Uh-huh." He could return to the bedroom and stand in front of the open closet. The towel would slip from his hips. He could bend over and pick it up, throw it on the bed. I could feel the weight of the towel land on my ankles. His straight hair would curl slightly behind his right ear. I could follow the curl down the side of his neck, around the 10 or 15 strands of russet fuzz on his chest. He could have a faint vertical line of down running from his chest to his lower stomach, branching into his red pubic mound. The red telephone could ring, and he could stand by the bed with his right hand on his white hip, just below his tan line. He could slowly sit on the bed and even more languorously lay his head on the pillow as he continued to speak into the phone. I could lean over and kiss his left shoulder, which could smell like English lavender. I could bend my head down and kiss his tightening thigh. I could let my tongue move all the way along down his thigh to his ankle. I could grab both his ankles and spread his firm legs apart. I could hear his voice quiver into the phone. I could crawl in between his legs. I could nest my head between his thighs. I could make him late for work.
And this is, here again, this is, I guess, a prose poem. But what it does, here again, to me, women respond to this, and it almost has that mystical thing of women's sense of power. or that pleasure in that sense. So and the rhythm of it, of course, speaks to us all too, and the humor of it. I think it's a lovely little.
It's interesting how she's talking about him, because she's really talking about. She's really telling you about her.
Yeah, and
So this is second person. It's
it changes.
It's odd.
And but that rhythm is what's nice too, and I think that's a very sexual rhythm too, is what he does and how she responds. And it's really
It's all good. It's all potential.
Yeah. The potential gives a lot of tension there.
Yeah. Because I went ahead of myself. We might as well read the how long did we go? Well,
12:30.
12:30. Oh, good. Because I got ahead of myself about what happens is really outside of the story. I have the story by Raymond Carver, and here again, last year I got my favorite stuff. And my favorite stories, and none of these are particularly my favorite. Well, Bobbie. But no, but in this file here, the but this is not my favorite Raymond Carver story. But it's for the rhythm of it and for what happens outside of the story is what gets British. Early that day, the weather turned and the snow was melting into dirty water. Streaks of it ran down from the little shoulder-high window that faced the backyard. Cars slushed by on the street outside where it was getting dark, but it was getting dark on the inside, too. He was in the bedroom pushing clothes into a suitcase when she came to the door. I'm glad you're leaving, she said. Do you hear? He kept on putting things into the suitcase. Son of a bitch, I'm glad you're leaving. She began to cry. Can't even look me in the face, can you? Then she noticed the baby's picture on the bed and picked it up. He looked at her and she wiped her eyes and stared at him before turning and going back to the living room. Bring that back, he said. Just get your things and get. Then began to cry and she uncovered the blanket from around his head. Oh, she said, looking at the baby. He moved toward her. For God's sake, she said, and she took a step back into the kitchen. I want the baby. Get out of here. She turned and tried to hold the baby over in a corner behind the stove. But he came up. He reached across the stove and tightened his hands on the baby. Let go of him, he said. Get away, she cried. The baby was red-faced and screaming. In the scuffle, they knocked down a flower pot that hung behind the stove. He crowded her into the wall then, trying to break her grip. He held onto the baby and pushed with all his weight. Let go of him, he said. Don't, she said. You're hurting the baby, she said. I'm not hurting you, baby, he said. The kitchen window gave no light. In the near dark, he worked on her fisted fingers with one hand, and with the other hand you gripped the screaming baby up under an arm near the shoulder. She felt her fingers being forced open. She felt the baby going from her. No, she screamed, just as her hands came loose. She would have it, Miss Billy. She grabbed for the baby's other arm. She caught the baby around the wrist and leaned back. But he would not let go. He felt the baby slipping out of his hands, and he pulled back very hard. In this manner, with the shoulders beside him. Sandals. And this is, the horrible struggle. Here, yeah.
When you're done talking about the COID, yes.
Okay. This, of course, is full of parents and children. The unsaid part in the story is the love and hatred between these people, is their marriage. There's so much. They must have loved each other so much to hate each other that much. That's what the story is filled with. The awful tension. That's what's unsaid here. I hate to say that killing as a baby is not what's the issue here, but it is the whole marriage that's not talked about, and it isn't necessary to talk about. It's just dealt with in that horrible. What were you gonna say?
Do you remember the one Carver story? It's told in exactly the same way, and it's another combo. She's saying he better not go.
The hunting story, and he doesn't go. Yeah. Yeah. And he doesn't go. That's beautiful. That's a lovely story.
It's odd because different it's inverted from all the other stories.
Yeah.
It's Paul, it's Atkinson, Brand.
Well, it's interesting. I don't know if he did that with that particular story, but there's another story about a birthday cake in the bakery. The bakery makes a cake, and originally in the Santa Barbara edition, it was called Autumn Leaves or something. There were a bunch of short stories, and they all had horrible endings. And he rewrote about 5 or 6 stories after he got sober. Because those were written in alcoholic and miserable and wretched and during a horrible marriage. And he went back, and the baby died in the story, and the baker was nasty and all. Story, it was just this ugly story, but he rewrote it and changed it to the parents sitting down as a baker, and there's a sense of forgiveness and love and stuff. He may well have done it to that particular one. No, he did it before he was dying. He did it, but I talked to him in Berkeley at a reading, and the way the discussion came up was because I had read, and I guess it was one of his last collections, and I said that he changed. I said, well, I'm an alcoholic too, so that was a very much interest to me, because I asked him, did you write the Cathedral when you were drinking or when you were sober? He said, what do you think? He said, I bet about when you were sober. He said, no. Because, well, aside from having your, being sober, you've got to forgive yourself a lot of things. And so you have to end up forgiving other people a lot of things. You stop blaming other people and the anger and the paranoia. It just simply have to, or you'll get drunk again. And so he may have changed that, but and in his poetry too, there was and then also he fell in love, and that was a very healing relationship too. But he changed quite a few stories.
Actually, for me, there was a nice story, which he hasn't been so strong in casket as Nana. This the husband's equal right to the child.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we want that is. I mean, it's not just always plays out to have a child and father.
It's no certainty. As that idea.
The relationship at home. The father can bond the child. Yeah,
Except in the one society variable. It used to be in the it's sex sauce.
Gender.
No, we
I see. I like this. This is idea. I saw this word. I also said sex objects. Now the new buzz person. There are success objects.
Oh, okay. Manners.
Success objects.
we're not. Well, they were not allowed to commemorate over when I worked at Boundary and we created.
But none of I don't think anybody's working. That's why.
So there is a world out there where men have jobs you wouldn't apply.
No, the women are working away. They're all working hard.
They both have jobs. They're both yelling.
Yeah. I sort of skipped around, so I've lost my couple of trains of thought. But back to what I like, but about purity of intent. One thing I notice a lot in is what I call the Diane Arbus syndrome. Writers that I can't stand, like Bobby Ann Mason, who's a good writer, and Ann Beatty. I mean, these people zero, and even Joyce Carol Oates, they zero in. They know just what people wear, what they eat, Campbell's soup, and what malls they go to. But there's always that distance of these people are so tacky. Oh, yeah, so yucky. And it, the Checkov thing I passed out. What I love about Checkov and Carver too is there has to be compassion for every person in these stories. If you're going to be even the slightest judgmental or patronizing, that's going to come through. And it isn't, it's, oh, there's it, Chekhov's dead.
I'll take these and give them to somebody else.
Okay. Like, I guess two examples of people who don't do that was a story by Checkov called Sleepy, and it's about this young girl who's a nursemaid and a maid in this house, and she spends all day cooking the samovar and going to the store and sleeping and waiting at the tables. And at night she has to take care of this baby. And the baby cries, and she's so sleepy, and she has to feed the baby. And then at 5 in the morning she has to get up and get the wood. And then one night she just holds the baby, and she goes to sleep. And Checkov does it in such a way that you have compassion for the parents and you feel sorry for the baby, that you have compassion for the girl. And another example, and I think is a great American book, is In Cold Blood. There's equal that he makes no his view of the victim, of the murderers, is as compassionate as of the without being sentimentalizing or romanticizing the criminal. It's as objective, and that objectivity is what gives it love, really, because it's not judgmental. He just states it. And Bobbie, that's what you do that too, which is so lovely. You're not saying, look at these. It's an objectivity of hearing, of putting down just what it is, so that it doesn't, so the reader responds to it as truth, not as some funny people in Arkansas or some comical ethnic people in the Bronx. They see them exactly, and it's any kind of look how these people, how funny these people. Yeah, were you gonna say something? You just waving. It's, and I have down here, you don't have to like the characters that you write about, but at some level you have to identify with them. You have to see their reality. I had a terrible time with this psychiatrist when I taught at the prison, because I loved that job. I mean, it was fun. My students were mostly young crack dealers, good, great sense of rhythm, great language, very funny. I mean, and but the psychiatrist thought that I liked working in the jail because of my poor self-image. Because I didn't work at Mills College, teaching composition. I mean, I loved going to the jail. It made me happy. I laughed the whole time. It was, and he went on about my poor self. And then I made it worse because I was trying to explain to him. I always get into trouble doing that. But at the time, there was this rapist that was on parole, Lawrence Stapleton. And he was having a terrible time because none of the towns where he got paroled who had had him. So he just kept he kept begging to go back to prison. But he was this horrible. Now, I don't know why he was paroled, actually. He didn't know. He didn't want to be paroled. For particularly that we knew it. And then that was besides me. His name was Lawrence Stapleton. And he not only raped the victims, he cut the hand off. And he was just a ghastly guy. But trying to, a guy who cut the girls. Yes. But trying to explain to the psychiatrist why I liked working in prison, I said, I'd rather have lunch with Lawrence Stapleton than William F. Buckley. This is what's horrible. This, I have to tell you what he said. You know what he said? You're sick. I thought that was just so terrible. That was my next favorite. The first favorite thing I was when I was talking about my mother, and he said she did what? But the thing of it is, I think I could. I think I could write about a story about Lawrence Stapleton, but only if my truth, if what I'm feeling when I'm writing about him is here again. When I was an alcoholic, when I'm still an alcoholic, I just don't drink. When I drank, I did things I didn't want to do. I did things that hurt people. I didn't want to drink. I knew I'd get some horrible trouble. I'd hurt somebody. I'd do awful stuff. I'd wreck a car. I'd burn the house down. I'd end up in jail. I knew something awful was going to happen. And I drank again. And so at some level, because that's my truth, I could write, I think, I mean, if I wanted to, write about Lawrence Stapleton without saying this is this monster. But not because I'm being compassionate toward him or sympathetic toward him. That blows the whole thing. But because I'm writing about my own shame and my own compulsion. And that's where the truth comes from. It doesn't have to be a big fact. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things that affected me is the first time I've ever read him, kind of myself like wanting him to get away. Like,
Yeah.
What Barkov did to make me feel like, I wanted the narrator to get away with what he was doing.
Yeah.
Even though it was so sick. But I found myself, empathizing. And it was really, it was sickly to me, how got me to do that. And I read a second time, and just like trying to pay attention to the things that he was doing to make me feel.
But here again, it just told it like it was. He didn't try to, if he tried to influence you one way or the other, you wouldn't trust him, and you'd react and say, that's disgusting.
You never say before home.
Yeah. No, then you'd say, that's true. And he just told it straight. And the straighter you tell it, the more the reader trusts us.
So I take it you're not a Evelyn Waugh fan?
Yeah, I'm surprised.
I perceive that you were not in Emmy's characters at all. They're these two on the way.
What will you do? And that I love her. Some patterns. Then it certain spotlights falling was one of the best working small sandwiches I've ever read.
Yeah, I think so too. I turned it. Well, I just
like you're there too.
It's like you're there too.
If you're within your own human condition and you're available to these, you can think Elon Wall's a humanist. I mean, given that he lets dogs fall out of helicopters and smash next to people and he love on the roof so they suddenly are covered, that's a dog. I mean, and that qualifies as human. But like where he locates himself, he's not superior to it within it. It's not like, look at these stupid.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I mean about the
Diana thing is spinning.
Yeah.
That's the thing about Jewish Carol. It says in music, like she's not part of what's happening. Like,
It's almost
That's
like
it.
It's like her, like there's no kind of folly like that ever.
No.
To her.
John Updike is another one too that writes really well. And he said something in an article once. He says he goes through his stories and he kicks out anything that might at all be indicative of any psychological hang-ups or things, or anything personal. He deletes it from his stories, which is exactly why I think he's so sterile, even though he's, a good writer. I mean, Madame Bovary, if you look at it, it's cuckoo. I mean, he's got a thing about women's feet and shoes. I mean, there's shoes on every page and every, but it's almost precisely those tics and those that his own personality that comes through.
That's certainly sure achieving.
Yeah, that's true too, and that's really true. Yeah.
I'm interested in on this lines as sort of acidic satire from some right.
Tom will.
In a sense. I don't know.
That's true. But there's also it's almost an affection toward it, like I think toward it. Like I'm thinking of Thomas Wolfe and Baton twirling an old myth about these southern teenagers twirling batons. I mean, it could be that he was just. There is an underlying affection, even though he's just trashing his poor girl.
But when isn't actually from that Greek Lishy?
I think there's when there's a distancing, and I don't know how exactly it happens. That's a good question.
You feel it differently in your stomach. So, but if you don't, so what?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a place at the outside edge of his Herbert Films track.
You want to probably tell you right. Well, I don't she's at the seashore. See you.
Actually, so have I, but I'm trying to argue against it. You know, yeah, like
Deliveroo. John heard it.
yeah.
But some people love
I can't either for the same thing. It's like he's making up. Oh, and the other is Ann Tyler. He makes up all these sort of weird people who have these endearing love affairs and stuff. There's still that Diane Arbor thing. These are some weird fucking people who find this love and affection together. It's almost making fun of them. Yeah. 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 Right.
So you see, I was just going to say, somehow for just you sort of not quite the acting method of writing, but if you want to, the author should be able to praise live herself.
Yeah.
Sorry. Just
Yeah. And if he does, then he'll naturally not have that pattern.
I feel like it works when people go just
yeah.
You smile. Yes.
Yeah, I want to get back to that a lot. But you had a question.
Well, that was for especially yesterday for Ramond by God. She had, I don't know, like color Getty's white velvet tears her. You're burning something that's unnatural to yourself. But yeah, that was what I was trying to get at. Is that the word? Are you and Bobbie Louis for years special? And also, I just like read the right Checkov book. I don't really talk to it, but when I read them, it's sort of pointless, and it goes on, and almost as the previous time, previous time, where the story go on and on. So about the these kids the habits, and that's the reason why I like this literature. It's like
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I do. Here again is I feel like I've gone. It's almost like going to a place, and the truth of him like go, and it's the rhythm again. It's the rhythm like of the wagons playing along, or the tea. You go there, and that life is so real.
Yeah.
And without a plot or without anything particularly happening, it's true.
Yeah.
And the lack of judgment again on each of any characters, whether they're horse stealers or, the baby murderers or princesses. There's no, the spoiled little princess. He's as compassionate to her as he is to the horse stealer. As for autobiographical, that's my pet peeve. If people says, well, I was talking to a girlfriend. She said, well, we've got to get together. He said, well, she said, I just read your book, so I know your whole life story. He said, but I have to catch you up on me. And it's also a thing when I talk about feeling and putting your true guts in there. It doesn't mean spilling your guts out. Au contraire, as my mom would say. A lot of my stories are things that just happen, like the electric car or actual just stories about things that happen in my life. But the ones people like are invariably the ones, even though they're drawn to my life, they came from a feeling. there's a let me see, for example, like Angels Laundromat was a story. It's about a Northern Indian in a laundromat. When I read that story, I'd asked a friend if I could go to the house for the weekend. I'd been fired from I had just ended my academic career as a medieval Spanish scholar because of my drinking. I was 30 years old. My life work was ruined. My third divorce was over. My life was, I felt, over. And I had just faced the fact that I was an alcoholic. I had never wanted to drink. My mother was an alcoholic. That was the last thing I wanted to be. I was in this house and mainly I wanted to sober up and get myself together to go look for another job. There's none of that in Angels Laundromat. I also, when I got to that house, I saw that under the sink was a bottle of tequila and Kahlua. And I knew when I finished that story that I could get me dead drunk. But the story, I talk about this drunken Indian. And it alludes to lost husband, to lost lives, to things that you're never going to see again. I don't know why people like that story. And real young people will say, well, like Angels Laundromat. And I don't know what they're responding to because nothing much happens in that story either. You know, they fold the laundry and
Yeah.
But somewhere, something I put in there of my misery, which I don't talk about it at all. And I did know a drunken Indian in the laundromat, and I saw him a lot. But that's the form I put my feeling into. So I draw from life, but it's not necessarily autobiographical. It's another mask, if anything. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, could you read that score?
Do you know I didn't bring my...
You have.
You do?
Also, there. I mean, I've read the story a couple of times now, but I think you're talking about there are things, and that feeling is there.
Mm-hmm.
It's there in the song while it's removed. It's there.
Yeah, sure it is.
It's there.
But I said, but it's in fact, and this, I will read it, but I want to say
there
one more
again,
thing.
what's not said.
In
Yeah.
fact, the narrator would follow this.
I throw in a hint. In one of it, I say sober. When she puts a dime in the thing, and I said sober is hard. You know, because obviously she knows how hard it is drunk. Or hungover when your hands are shaking to get that whole thing going. But
There's also the part of the American self-policy or you all experience the sense of vanish in India.
mm-hmm.
That counts for England.
Okay. All right. I want okay. I don't have any choice. I just want to give a few more examples from my own work, though. Another story called my grandfather's story about the dentist. Oh God. That was true. That did happen. You know, I helped him pull his teeth. What I didn't write was that I was there every day all summer when I was 7. My grandfather abused me, and years later, my sister, consistently sexually this. I mean, horribly locked in that office every day, every afternoon. I didn't write about that, but the story is full of violence. The story is turned around so she has the power over him. She thinks she's killed him on the phone. And it ends with, you know, go ahead and Booney. Oh, yes, I do. And I didn't have to write about the dins. I mean, that's on Oprah Winfrey and all that. You can get that all day long. What I had to write about was my two feelings, the violence of it and the anger of it and the forgiveness of it. I had to get, those were what had to come in the story. And that's so that the vehicle, so that the form came out of that. And I guess I'm trying to say is listen to what things have mattered in your life. It doesn't mean telling, oh, one more thing, and then I will read the story. Gordon Lish, whoever he is, some big hotshot editor and writer, teacher as I'm, his main assignment for students is write about the most shameful time of your life. But I would sort of further it and say, write about it, but don't tell us why it was. And I want to throw in a couple more assignments, but I don't think I'll have time. But try that for just Thursday. We'll see what happens. Write about the most his is write about the most shameful moment of your life. But what he wants you to do is actually tell about it and then have the guts to share it with the class. I'd like you to write about it, but not really tell us what exactly happened.
Shameful or shapeless?
Shame. The time of your life that is supposed you the most shame.
Schools.
And then can we write the shameless one out?
Yeah. Shame. I always gonna be ashamed. I need that. My grandmother was always calling me shiftless. And there's a really lovely short story about Dylan Thomas. But he said she stood shiftless in the middle. I didn't think of this Texan kid, you know. Work it on. Okay. Angels Laundromat. Originally, the first line in this story was, I don't know why Indians get so drunk. And all the editors thought that was racist, so no one is allowed in rule. A tall old Indian in faded Levi's and a fine zoomy belt. His hair white and long, knotted with raspberry yarn at his neck. Strange thing was that for a year or so we were always at Angels at the same time. But not at the same times. I mean, some days I'd go at 7 on a Monday, or maybe at 6:30 on a Friday evening, and he would already be there. Mrs. Armitage had been different, although she was old too. That was in New York at the San Juan Laundry on Cookdean Street. Puerto Ricans, suds overflowing onto the floors. I was a young mother then and wore starters on Thursday mornings. She lived above me in 4C. One morning at the laundry, she gave me a key and I took it. She said if I didn't see her on Thursdays, it meant she was dead, and would I please go find her body. That was a terrible thing to ask of someone. Also, then I had to do my laundry on Thursday. She died on a Monday, and I never went back to the San Juan. The super found her. I don't know how. For months at Angels, the Indian and I did not speak to each other, but we sat next to each other in connected yellow plastic chairs, like at airports. They skidded in the ripped linoleum and the sound of her teeth. He used to sit there sipping Jim Beam, looking at my hands. Not directly, but into the mirror across from us, above the speed green washers. At first it didn't bother me, an old Indian staring at my hands through the dirty mirror, between yellow ironing, 150 a dozen, and orange day-glow serenity prayers. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Then I began to wonder if he had something about hands. It made me nervous, him watching me smoke and blow my nose, leafs through magazines years old, Lady Bird Johnson going down the rapid. Finally, he got me staring at my hands. I saw him almost grin because he caught me staring at my own hands. For the first time, our eyes met in the mirror between Don't Overload the Machine. There was panic in my eyes. I looked into my own eyes and back down at my hands. Horrid age spots, 2 scars. Un-Indian, nervous, lonely hands. I could see children and men and gardens in my hands. His hands that day, the day I noticed mine, were on each top bluish thigh. Most of the time they shook badly, he just let them shake in his lap. But that day he was holding them still. The effort to keep them from shaking turned his adobe up a spite. The only time I had spoken with Mrs. Armitage outside of the laundry was when her toilet had overflowed, was pouring down through the chandelier on my floor of the building. The lights were still burning while the water splashed rainbows through them. She gripped my arm with her cold, dying hand and said, "It's a miracle, isn't it?" His name was Tony, who was a Jicarilla Apache from up north. One day I hadn't seen him, but I knew it was his fine hand on my shoulder. He gave me 3 dimes. I didn't understand, almost said thanks. Then I saw it was sick and couldn't work the dryers. Sober, it's hard. You have to turn the arrow with one hand, put the dime in with the other, push down the plunger, then turn the arrow back for the next dime. He came back later, drunk, just as his clothes were starting to fall limp and dried. He couldn't get the door open and passed out in a yellow chair. My clothes were dry. I was folding. Angela and I got Tony back onto the floor of the pressing room, hot. Angel's responsible for all of the AA prayers and mottos. Don't think and don't drink. I got that wrong. The motto really is think and don't drink. But I has never figured it out. It took me so long, don't think. I didn't think. And they have signs all over that say think, 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 and I read them, don't think, don't think. Angel put a cold, wet one sock on Tony's head and knelt down beside us. Brother, believe me, I've been in right down there in the gutter where you are. I know just how to feel. Tony didn't open his eye. Anybody says he knows how someone else feels is a fool. Angels Laundromat is in Albuquerque, New Mexico, 4th Street. Shabby shops and junkyards, second-hand stores with army cots, boxes of one socks, 1940 editions of Good Hygiene. Grain stores and motels for lovers and drunks and old women with hennaed hair who do their laundry at Angel. Teenage Chicana brides go to Angel. Cowls, pink shorty nighties, bikini underpants that say Thursday. The husbands wear blue overalls with names in script on the pockets. I like to wait and see the names appear in the mirror vision of the dryers. Tino, Corky, Junior. Traveling people go to Angels. Dirty mattresses, rusty high chairs tied to the top, roofs of dented old Buicks. Leaky oil pans, leaky canvas water bags, leaky washing machine. The men sit in the cars, shirtless, shiftless, brush ham cans when they're empty. But it's Indians who go to Angels mostly, Pueblo Indians from San Felipe and Laguna and San Diego. Tony was the only Apache I ever met, commandery or anywhere else. I like to sort of cross my eyes and watch the dryers full of Indian clothes, blurring the brilliant swirling purples and oranges and reds and pinks. I go to Angels. I'm not sure why. It's not just the Indian. It's cross town for me. Only a block away is the campus, air-conditioned, soft rock, on the Muzak, New Yorker, Miz, and Cosmopolitan. Wives of graduate assistants go there and buy their kids zero bars and coats. Campus laundry has a sign, like most laundries do, positively no dying. I drove all over town with a green bedspread until I came to Angels with his yellow sign. You can die here anytime. I could see it wasn't turning deep purple, but a darker, muddy green. But I wanted to come back anyway. I liked the Indians and their laundry. The broken Coke machine and the flooded floor reminded me of New York. Puerto Ricans mopping. Their payphone was always out of order, just like Angel. But I have gone back to find his arms, each body on his Thursday. I'm chief of my tribe, the Indian said. He had just been sitting there, sipping port, looking at my hand. He told me that his wife worked cleaning houses. They had had 4 sons. The youngest one had committed suicide. The oldest had died in Vietnam. The other 2 were school bus drivers. You know why I like you yet? No, why? 'Cause you're a redskin. He pointed to my face in the mirror. I do have red skin, but no, I've never seen a red-skinned Indian. He liked my name, pronounced with an Italian, Lucia. He had been in Italy in World War II. Sure enough, there was a dog tag with his beautiful silver and turquoise necklace. Had a big dent in it. A bullet? No, he used to chew it when he got scared or horny. Once he suggested that we go lie down in his camper and rest together. Eskimos, they laugh together. I pointed to the lime green Dayglow sign. Never leaves the machines anytime. We both giggled, laughing together on our connected plastic chair. Then we sat, quiet. No sound but the sloshy water, rhythmic as ocean wave. His Buddha hand held Mondi. A train passed, he nudged me, great big iron horse. He started giggling all over again. I have a lot of unfounded generalizations about people. Like all blacks are bound to like Charlie Parker, Germans are horrible. All Indians have a weird sense of humor, just like my mother's. One favorite of hers is when this guy's bending down tying his shoe and another comes along, beats him up and says, "You're always tying your shoe." The other one is when a waiter is serving and he spills beans and someone slaps and says, "Uh-oh, I spills a bean." Tony used to repeat these to me on slow days at the laundry. Once he was very drunk, mean drunk, and got into a fight with some Okies in the parking lot. They busted his Jim Beam bottle. Angel said he'd buy him a half pint if he would just listen to him in the pressing room. I moved my clothes from the washer to the dryer while Angel talked to Tony about one day at a time. When Tony came out, he shoved his dimes into my hand. I put his clothes into a dryer while he struggled with a Jim Beam bottle cap. Before I could sit down, he hollered at me. I'm a chief of the Apache tribe." Pshick. Shed yourself, Chief. He was just sitting there drinking, looking at my hands in the mirror. "How come you do the Apache laundry?" I don't know why I said that. It was a horrible thing to say. Maybe I thought he would laugh. He did. What tribe are you, Redskin? He said, watching my hand stick out a cigarette. You know, my first cigarette was lit by a prince. Do you believe that? Sure, I believe. Want a light? He lit my cigarette and we smiled at each other. We were very close and then he passed out and I was alone in the mirror. There was a young girl, not in the mirror, but sitting by the window. Her hair curled in the wispy but the cello. I read all the signs. God give me the courage. New crib, never used, baby died. The girl put her clothes into a turquoise basket and she left. I moved my clothes to the table, checked Tony's, and put in another dime. I was alone in Angels with Tony. I looked at my hands and eyes in the mirror, pretty blue-eyed. Once I was on a yacht off Viña del Mar. I borrowed my first cigarette and asked the Prince Ali Khan for a light. Enchanté, he said. He didn't have a match, actually. I folded my laundry, and when Angel came back, I went home. I can't remember when it was that I realized I never did see that old Indian again. Anyway, back to autobiographical. Here again, the stories that feature. I use events to illustrate a reality where I am right now. Very simple stories about a girl in a Catholic school. It's in that book too. But that was prompted by being at work and having lunch with this woman who talk every day. They go over Family Feud and the questions that were asked and which ones they got and they didn't. And I don't know, all those things, and just feeling so lonesome. You know, I've been there for almost 2 years and I still feel lonesome. You know, it's not that I want to be able to talk about Family Feud, but that always the feeling of being outside. And I remembered how I felt in third grade with in this Catholic school. That's how the story came from. That yeah, but it was engendered by some other total reality. So, even though that did happen. Yeah. No, I didn't mean to. See, you thought I did it too. I didn't mean to. I just dropped.
I'm glad that came up.
No, but here again, that's in very quickly. There's another story. I don't know if it's in this book where there's, and that happened to living in Mexico with an addict custody. I did stab Garcia, but the other part of it, I was staying in. My youngest son, fortunately, is fine now. At the time, he was addicted to crack cocaine. It was horrible, nothing. He was out of town, and my niece, I had a bunch of family staying at my house, and I stayed at his hall. And this answering machine, and the duels would come on, and they were threatening to slide. And the messages kept coming on the machine. And I was waiting for it to come so I could hear where he was, because I didn't know where he was. And I wrote that story about how my marriage was ruined with drugs. The story came from that. But what I did to that drug dealer, I had him fall in the fire, burn up. I dragged him across the stand. I threw him in the ocean. That was my story about what I do to Danny's dope dealer. I mean, so there's things in there I do for myself in my story. Like in the story Itinerary, I gave myself this Baudelaire that I could lean on. I've never had a nice aunt like that. You know, gave me a diary and brownies. I made her up. You know, because, I wanted somebody, some nice old auntie that would feed me and give me presents. So there's a... Anyway, that's how I deal with my autobiography. I wanted to touch sort of quickly upon gender and sexuality. Why? because I know I told Bobbie this morning that I'm as scared of those, I'm as afraid of those women as I used to be of those men. I know I'm so scared of that balance. But my biggest objection is any kind of theory or focusing on any, whether it's political or whether racial or feminist. A Kant is bound to come into your writing. There's another, when you're trying to get a point across, you lose your own voice. And when you lose the truth of your own voice, it does not reach everyone. Too much gets said. The writer slips into Kant and speaks in jargon. You can't avoid it if you're trying to make any kind of a point. Margaret Atwood, I stole this line from Mort Saul talking about Gloria Steinem before she became a woman, when she wrote Surfacing, and these beautiful, beautiful stories, and they're really female stories. But then when she started to be self-conscious about it and wrote stories about making a gingerbread man and eating, it lost her, I think, what was a truly female voice to me. And I think you can mess up a perfectly good love story, sad love story, if they're trying to illustrate like your victimization or how bad someone is. Another problem I have with gender and sexuality is the rewriting of history. Is that that you don't just take things, just as in writing a story, be objective about your characters, write them as they are. The same way in reading writers. Okay, so Hemingway was an asshole, but read what he wrote, for what it was. Alice Osterger, whose books I've just read a few things for her. She's a wonderful writer. But she said one sentence that just bothered me. She said, if George Eliot had not been so repressed, her women would not have had to die. Her heroines. Of course they had to die. Madame Bovary had to die. Anna Karenina had to die. Catherine of the D'Urbervilles. If not, they'd just be, and this was the truth of the time. If not, they'd be sitting around some seedy motel in Miami. Imagine. I mean, they had to die. Focusing on it. If you're trying to see what's politically cool, I don't know. I had a bunch of stuff on those. Where is it? And in men, I think this is more of a problem with men writing and women writing, because men now are so afraid of being, too much or too sexist or politically. I mean, it must be really hard. That's why I really like writers like Jim Harrison and even Norman Mailer, because they have the courage to be such, outright. That's right. But they also, at the same time, and this is why you can't just dismiss them. I love both those guys because they have what G.H. Lawrence called the courage of their own tenderness. And it goes hand in hand, so you cannot throw it out with a bathwater. And then I got carried away here, and I said, well, Jesus Christ wasn't such a big deal that he died on the cross. So because he was relentless, a drillist, it was here again, the conviction, the purity of intent and of his own conviction. That was what to me was that we should hear. It is his courage of his own tenderness. And I had a couple of quotes here, and there's another piece. Well, anyway, I do want to quote James M. Cain. There are just a lot of writers that I think get shortchanged now. He can live this full consciousness of I forget what the gem. Only a okay. Don't think. Don't think. I knew there was something. Nice. Like James M. Cain. Here's some lines. It was just a kitchen table. He at one end. This is from The Postman, always inspired. He at one end, she at the other, and me in the middle. I didn't look at her.